Okay, I want you to imagine something for a minute. Picture a place you've built, a community you've been a part of for almost 10 years. It's filled with your friends, your memories, your creations. Now, imagine it all just vanishing one day. This isn't a hypothetical. This is the real story of AltSpaceVR.
And that's exactly what AltSpaceVR was for so many people. It wasn't just a game or some app. It was a genuine social space. One of the pioneers, really. This was a place where entire communities popped up, people held concerts, made art, and built friendships that were just as real as any in the physical world.
And then, poof! On March 10th, 2023, the servers just went dark. In a blink, all of it was gone. The worlds people built, the communities they nurtured, the connections they made, gone. So today, we're going to do the post-mortem on a digital world.
So let's get right into it. The simple answer is that its owner, Microsoft, just pulled the plug. But the real story, the story of how a pioneering platform that they'd bought back in 2017 could just disappear overnight, well, that's a whole lot more complicated.
Yeah, that's the real head-scratcher, isn't it? Why would a company like Microsoft shut down a platform that had such a dedicated, passionate user base? Well, as it turns out, the decision wasn't just about AltSpaceVR. It was about these much bigger forces shifting behind the scenes across the whole tech industry.
All right, let's unpack this. When you look at the official reasons that were given, it really all boils down to three critical factors that came together and pretty much sealed AltSpaceVR's fate.
First, there was a major strategic pivot from Microsoft itself. Second, you had this massive wave of corporate cost-cutting that was sweeping through the company. And third, the platform was basically collapsing under its own weight because of something called technical debt. So on that first point, Microsoft basically looked at the landscape and decided the future, and let's be honest, the money, wasn't in consumer social hangouts. Nope, it was in the enterprise space, in tools for the workplace. And their new baby became Microsoft Mesh, something designed to plug right into Microsoft Teams for business meetings. Now, this wasn't happening in a vacuum. The shutdown happened right in the middle of massive layoffs of Microsoft. We're talking 10,000 people lost their jobs. And guess who was part of that cut? The entire AltSpaceVR team. So yeah, any hope of a last-minute save or a revival, that was pretty much off the table. And finally, there was this problem of technical debt. Look, it's a techie term, but the idea is simple. AltSpaceVR was a decade old. In tech years, that's ancient. Think of it like trying to build a new smart home on top of a crumbling old foundation. Sooner or later, you realize it's just easier and cheaper to abandon the whole project than to fix all the deep structural problems.
But this whole thing was bigger than just one community. I mean, the closure of a legendary platform like AltSpaceVR, it sent a massive shockwave through the entire virtual reality industry. Everyone was watching.
And what this really signaled was a shift in the whole Metaverse dream. You know, the original idea was for this open, connected space where you could move freely between worlds and own your digital stuff. But the reality that's emerging is one of walled gardens, these closed ecosystems completely controlled by a single company, where nothing you create can ever leave. And just to prove it wasn't a fluke, look what happened next. Just a couple of months later, Meta, another huge player, did something very similar. They started sunsetting features in their own business app, Workrooms, and laid off thousands from their Reality Labs division. The message was loud and clear. The big Metaverse gold rush was slowing way down. Okay, so that's all the corporate strategy and the industry trends. But what about the people? What was the actual human cost for the thousands of users who had called AltSpaceVR home for years?
Well, Microsoft did offer users a way to save their information. They told them they could download their metadata. And what did that mean? Basically, spreadsheets. A list of your friends, a list of events you attended, a list of the worlds you'd favorited.
But here is the gut punch. You can't capture a home in a spreadsheet. Those thousands of unique, incredible 3D spaces that people had poured their hearts into building. The art galleries, the community centers, the private little hangouts, they were gone forever. There was simply no way to save them. So the community scattered to the digital winds. A lot of them tried to migrate to other platforms like VRChat or Horizon Worlds. Some really dedicated users even created these beautiful memorial worlds in these new places, trying to build little digital lighthouses where old friends from AltSpaceVR might be able to find each other again. But did it work? How many people actually reconnected? The truth is, there's no data. We just don't know. And that question mark, that absence of a number, it tells its own powerful story, doesn't it? It's the story of a community that was fractured, with who knows how many friendships just severed for good.
So, After all that, what should we take away from this? Because the shutdown of AltSpaceVR isn't just some dusty old piece of tech history. It's a really powerful and, frankly, cautionary lesson about the way our lives are becoming more and more digital.
I think the legacy here is a pretty clear message from the industry. Their focus has really shifted away from building and taking care of these social communities and moved toward creating practical business tools that have a clear return on investment. The hype, it seems, is over.
And so it leaves us all with this huge, critical question to think about. As we spend more and more of our lives in these digital spaces, spaces where we build things, form real relationships, and feel at home, who truly owns them? And what happens when the landlord decides it's no longer profitable to keep the lights on?